What starts as a simple Reddit post can spiral into something far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that refuse to stay contained on a screen, the ones that bleed into real life, the ones that escalate beyond control. If you're ready to dive into the darkest corners of the internet, where ordinary people faced extraordinary horror, then smash that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. These are real stories, real people, real terror. Let me tell you about the threads that went too far. There's a locked door in my girlfriend's house, and she refuses to tell me what's inside. That's how it started for one man we'll call David. 5 years into a relationship, moving in together, everything seemed perfect. Until he noticed something strange. His girlfriend Amy owned a beautiful Victorian house, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a dream home purchased years ago during a market crash. But one room upstairs had a padlock on it. Not a regular door lock, a heavy-duty padlock. When David asked about it, Amy shrugged it off. "Just stuff," she said. "Storage. Nothing important." But that answer didn't sit right. He wasn't asking to invade her privacy. He just wanted to know what was behind a locked door in the house he was about to move into. It seemed reasonable. It seemed normal. But Amy's reaction was anything but normal. She refused. Completely. Wouldn't even discuss it. And that's when David realized something was deeply wrong. He took his concerns to Reddit, posting on relationship advice. The responses came flooding in. Hundreds of comments, thousands of upvotes. Everyone wanted to know what was in that room. Some joked about bodies. Others suggested illegal activity. But most people agreed on one thing. He had a right to know before moving in. The pressure mounted. David couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. The mystery consumed him. Finally, he confronted Amy. He told her plainly that he couldn't move forward until he knew what was in that room. He didn't care what it was. He just needed to see it. He needed the truth. Amy tried to deflect, tried to change the subject, but David stood firm, and eventually she broke down. The truth spilled out, and it wasn't what anyone expected. That room contained everything from her previous relationship. Photos, gifts, letters, an entire life she'd shared with someone else, someone who had died. She couldn't bring herself to go through it, couldn't face the memories, couldn't let go. So she locked it away, locked away her grief, locked away her pain. And now that secret was threatening to destroy her current relationship. David felt a wave of emotions. Relief that it wasn't something sinister, sadness for what Amy had been carrying alone, and understanding finally about why she'd been so defensive. They opened that door together, sorted through the memories together, and began the healing process together. But the Reddit thread had already gone viral. Thousands of people invested in this mystery. And when David posted his update, the reaction was mixed. Some felt disappointed it wasn't more dramatic. Others celebrated the honest, human resolution. But everyone learned something important that day. Sometimes the scariest secrets aren't supernatural. They're the ones we keep from the people we love. That story ended well, but not all of them do. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Drop a comment and let me know which story is hitting you the hardest so far. Objects kept disappearing in Michael's apartment. Small things, at first. An anti-mosquito device, a travel pillow. Items he used regularly would vanish, only to reappear days later, wedged behind furniture, behind the cupboard, behind the couch, places they couldn't have fallen naturally. Someone was taking his belongings and hiding them, but Michael lived alone. The disappearances continued for 2 weeks, then suddenly stopped. But Michael's paranoia had already taken root. He installed security cameras using an old phone and an app called Alfred. 1 camera in the living room, 1 in the bedroom. He went to sleep that night with his phone monitoring the feeds. And then he heard it, a loud thud, something falling in the living room. Michael jumped out of bed and searched the apartment. Found nothing. No signs of entry, no evidence of anyone being there. He convinced himself it was his imagination and went back to sleep. But the next morning, the camera had captured something. 3 motion-activated recordings, images from the darkness. And when Michael looked at the photos, his blood ran cold. There in the low light, a figure, barely visible, standing in his living room, watching him sleep through the bedroom door. The image was grainy, distorted by darkness, but unmistakably human. Someone had been in his apartment. Someone was still hiding there, waiting, watching. Michael immediately called the police, grabbed essentials, and fled to a friend's house. The investigation revealed something even more disturbing. His apartment had a small crawl space accessible through a panel in the bedroom closet. A space Michael never knew existed. A space just large enough for someone to hide, to live, to observe. The intruder was never found. No fingerprints, no DNA, no clues about who they were or why they'd chosen Michael. But the evidence was clear. Someone had been living in his walls, coming out at night to move his things, to stand over him while he slept, to violate his sense of safety in the most intimate way possible. Michael moved out immediately, never spent another night in that apartment. But the psychological damage was done, the violation complete, and somewhere out there, the person who terrorized him remains free. Possibly doing the same thing to someone else. Possibly reading Reddit threads about their own crimes and smiling. These stories remind us that the walls we trust to protect us might be hiding our worst nightmares. Sarah worked at a coffee shop. A regular customer started coming in more frequently, asked her out. She politely declined, mentioned she had a boyfriend, tried to keep things professional. But the customer, let's call him Derek, didn't take the hint. He kept coming back, kept asking, kept pushing. Then one Tuesday, Sarah was backing out of her driveway when she saw him. Derek, leaning against a Toyota Camry parked across the street, staring at her house, staring at her car, not hiding, not even pretending to have a reason to be there, just watching. Sarah asked if he needed something. He said no, told her to have a good day. She asked him to leave. He didn't respond, just stared for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. When Sarah reached for her car door to confront him, Derek finally got in his car and drove away. But the damage was done. Sarah called in sick to work, called the police. They suggested he was probably casing her house for burglary, told her to install security cameras. So she did. She bought a ring system, set it up with her brother-in-law's help, felt a bit safer. A few days passed without incident. Life started returning to normal. Then came Sunday. Sarah was watching football when movement caught her eye. She looked toward her front window, and there was Derek, face pressed against the glass, staring at her. Laughing, Sarah grabbed her gun and ran to the window, but Derek was already gone, vanished like smoke. She called the police again. They took the ring footage, started trying to track him down. Sarah and her husband went to stay with family. Felt like the smart move, the safe move. But Derek wasn't finished. 2 in the morning. Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. A voice asked if she was home. Derek's voice. Calm, casual, like they were friends catching up. Sarah's hands shook as she hung up. Blocked the number. But 5 minutes later, another call. Different number. Same question. Are you home, Sarah? The calls kept coming. Different numbers every time. Sarah stopped answering, stopped sleeping. The police traced some of the numbers to burner phones. Dead ends. They increased patrols near her house. But Derek seemed to know their schedule. Always appeared when they weren't around. Always just watching. Always just calling. Never quite crossing the line into something they could arrest him for. Until the day he showed up at her actual workplace. Walked right up to the counter, ordered a coffee, smiled at Sarah like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't been terrorizing her for weeks, like this was completely normal. And that's when Sarah realized the horrifying truth. Derek believed they had a relationship. In his twisted mind, this was romance, courtship. He genuinely thought he was winning her over. The restraining order came through. Derek was arrested, released on bail. The trial is still pending as of the last update. But Sarah lives every day looking over her shoulder, jumping at every knock on the door, every ring of the doorbell, even on TV shows. The sound triggers panic attacks, PTSD from a man who thought stalking was love. And the scariest part? Derek isn't unique. This happens every single day to baristas, waitresses, retail workers, people just trying to do their jobs, people who smile and provide customer service and somehow become targets for obsession. It's a terrifying reality that doesn't get talked about enough. If this story is hitting close to home, drop a comment below. Share your experience if you feel safe doing so. And hit that subscribe button because we're only halfway through, and trust me, it gets darker from here. Take a breath. Let that sink in. The violation, the fear, the absolute helplessness of being hunted by someone who sees nothing wrong with their actions. Now imagine something even worse. Imagine that the authority figures you trust to help you are actually predators in disguise. Jennifer was 9 months pregnant with her first child. Everything was going according to plan. Nursery set up, hospital bag packed. She and her husband were as ready as anyone could be to start their family. Then came the knock on the door. A woman holding official-looking credentials identified herself as a social worker with the Department of Child Services. Said she needed to ask some questions. Jennifer let her in. The woman explained that someone had reported concerns about Jennifer's fitness to be a mother. Concerns related to her husband's criminal record. Jennifer was confused. What criminal record? Her husband had a single marijuana possession charge from 11 years ago when he was a college freshman. Ancient history, long since expunged. The social worker nodded sympathetically, said it was probably just a routine check, nothing to worry about. But they needed to do a home inspection, schedule some interviews, standard procedure. Something felt off. Jennifer couldn't quite place it. But the woman had credentials, official paperwork. She knew details about Jennifer's life, her due date, her husband's name, even their address, obviously. So Jennifer cooperated, answered questions, scheduled a follow-up appointment, gave this stranger access to her home and her information. But after the woman left, Jennifer's anxiety grew. She decided to call the Department of Child Services directly, just to confirm, just to ease her mind. And that's when everything fell apart. DCS had no record of her case, no social worker by that name, no investigation whatsoever. The woman who'd been in Jennifer's home was a complete fraud, an imposter, someone pretending to be a social worker to gain access to a pregnant woman and her soon-to-be-born baby. Jennifer's blood ran cold. She immediately contacted a lawyer, then the police. The investigation revealed something even more disturbing. This woman had been researching Jennifer, knew intimate details about her life, had prepared elaborate fake credentials. This wasn't a random scam. This was targeted, calculated, and the implications were absolutely terrifying. What did this woman want with Jennifer's baby? Was she planning to steal the child, claim it as her own? The police took the threat seriously. Jennifer and her husband went into hiding at a family member's home. The hospital was notified, extra security measures put in place, and Jennifer waited to give birth in a state of constant fear. The fake social worker was never caught, never identified. The investigation went cold, and Jennifer delivered her baby surrounded by security guards, never knowing if the woman who'd invaded her home was watching, waiting, planning her next move. This story exposes a horrifying vulnerability in our system. We're taught to trust authority figures, police, doctors, social workers. We're taught that official credentials mean safety. But what happens when predators exploit that trust? When they weaponize our instinct to cooperate with people in positions of power? Jennifer's story spread across Reddit like wildfire. Other women came forward with similar experiences. Fake social workers, fake nurses, fake officials gaining access to homes and hospitals. Some were caught, most weren't, and the paranoia spreads like a disease. How do you know if someone is who they claim to be? How do you verify credentials in the moment? How do you protect yourself without becoming paralyzed by fear? The answer is complicated. Always verify. Always call back to confirm. Always trust your instincts. And always, always understand that evil often comes dressed in respectable clothing, carrying official paperwork and a friendly smile. Now let's talk about something that seems impossible. Let's talk about the people living in your walls. 17-year-old Ari was excited about the new house. Her parents had been searching for 2 years, finally found this beautiful Victorian mansion at an incredible price. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, nestled in the woods at the end of a quiet lane. It seemed like a dream come true. But the neighbors stared, not friendly waves, cold, suspicious stares, like they knew something the new family didn't. Strange things started happening immediately. Food disappearing faster than it should. Dirt tracked through the house even after cleaning. Ari's younger brother Kai, only 4 years old, claimed to have an imaginary friend, a man who came out of the walls at night, who whispered to him, who promised to protect him. Ari's parents dismissed it as typical childhood imagination, but Ari wasn't so sure. One day, Ari discovered something disturbing near their property line, a burnt-out foundation, the remains of another house. She asked the neighbors about it, and they told her the truth her parents had tried to hide. Years ago, a family lived in that house, a father, mother, 2 children. One night, the father snapped, killed his whole family, then supposedly killed himself. but his body was never found. The house burned down. The property sat empty for years, until eventually someone built a new house on the land. The very house Ari's family now called home, built directly on top of a murder site. And according to the neighbors, the investigators had been wrong about one thing. The father didn't die in that fire. He survived, and he was still somewhere nearby. Ari's heart raced as she ran back home, found her siblings, kept them close, and then she did something that would change everything. She examined the vent in Kai's room. The vent where Kai said his friend came from. She pushed on it, and to her absolute horror, it wasn't just a vent. It was a door, a section of the wall designed to look solid but actually concealed a crawl space, a passage, big enough for a person to squeeze through. Ari forced herself to look inside. The smell hit her first. Sour, rotten, wrong. She could see into her own bedroom through a similar hidden panel. See her bed. See where she slept every night. And then she heard it. Heavy breathing. From the darkness at the far end of the passage. From somewhere deeper in the walls. And then she saw him. A withered face, bloodshot eye, rotten teeth twisted into an insane grin. The father who'd murdered his family. The man who'd supposedly died years ago. Living in the walls. Watching Ari's family. Stealing their food. Walking above them while they slept. Touching their things. Breathing their air. For weeks, possibly months. Ari screamed, grabbed her siblings and ran. The sound of laughter followed them, scraping footsteps. The creature that used to be human chasing them through the house they thought was safe. They made it outside, called the police, called their parents, and waited while officers searched every inch of that cursed house. The man was gone by the time police arrived, but they found his den. A cave dug beneath the foundation, filled with trash, rotting food, evidence of someone living there, surviving there. The father had never left. He'd been there the whole time, in the walls, under the floors, part of the house itself, and he'd been watching Ari's family since the day they moved in. They moved immediately, not just to a new house, a new city, new locks, reinforced doors, security cameras, but none of it brings peace because the man was never found. He's still out there, still alive. And Ari's family lives every day wondering if he followed them, wondering if he's found a new house, new walls, a new family to terrorize. That story proves something I wish wasn't true. Sometimes the call is coming from inside the house. Sometimes the monster is already home. And sometimes the worst horror isn't what might happen. It's what's been happening all along without you knowing. Make sure you're subscribed because we're about to go even deeper. Hit that like button if these stories are getting under your skin. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever felt watched in your own home. Let's talk about it. Now take a deep breath. We need it. Because what comes next ventures into territory most people try to forget exists. The dark web, where humanity's worst impulses thrive without consequence, where the normal rules of society dissolve, and where some websites became so disturbing that even hardened investigators couldn't handle them. Most people have heard of the Silk Road, the infamous drug marketplace that operated from 2011 to 2013. But that's old news, ancient history in internet terms. What about the marketplaces that came after? The ones that learned from those mistakes? The ones that operated longer and more successfully than anyone wants to admit? let me tell you about Archetype Market. The story starts in Germany. A young man growing up in poverty after the Berlin Wall fell, surrounded by drugs from an early age, experimenting, making mistakes, believing himself invincible like most teenagers do. But then he discovered hallucinogens, and something shifted. He described it as being given the gift of critical thinking, as having an ego death that made him see himself clearly for the first time. He stopped drinking, started pursuing the dreams he'd abandoned, set new goals, and then he discovered the Silk Road, not as a customer, as inspiration. He began developing an ideology, a belief that drugs shouldn't be illegal, that prohibition causes more harm than the substances themselves, that true freedom means allowing people to make their own choices, even destructive ones. His name was Mark, and in 2020, he launched Archetype Market, an online drug marketplace designed to improve on the Silk Road's mistakes. No arms trafficking, no personal information, just drugs. Mark studied how Ross Ulbricht got caught, learned from those errors, used encrypted communications, anonymous cryptocurrency called Monero, made the site virtually untraceable, and it worked. Archetype Market ran for 5 years. 5 years of operating openly on the dark web. 5 years of facilitating drug sales across continents. 5 years of Mark living out his ideology that freedom means access to any substance you want. But here's the thing about ideology. It doesn't change reality. People still died. Families still got destroyed. Addiction still ruined lives. Mark's good intentions paved a road straight to suffering. Finally, in 2025, Operation Deep Sentinel brought him down, a joint effort by Europol and police from 44 countries. They seized the website, arrested Mark, and shut down the longest-running drug marketplace in dark web history. Mark is awaiting trial now, still believing he was fighting for freedom, still unable to see that his marketplace contributed to countless deaths, still convinced his intentions justified the consequences. But at least drugs are a known evil. At least we understand addiction. What about the websites that traffic in things far worse? Things that shouldn't exist at all? I need to tread carefully here. YouTube has strict guidelines about what can be discussed. But this story is important. It exposes a vulnerability, a horrifying reality that needs to be acknowledged even if it's uncomfortable. In June 2015, a website launched on the Tor browser. It grew quickly, gained traffic, became one of the most visited sites in the darkest corners of the internet. It was called Welcome to Video, and it hosted over 200,000 videos of child exploitation, 250,000, with over 1.2 million registered users. Let that number sink in. More users than some major cities have residents. 4,000 paid members, and 45% of the content was unique. Original, meaning these weren't just recycled materials. These were active crimes being committed and documented. The scope is almost incomprehensible. The scale of evil almost impossible to process. But investigators didn't give up. Homeland Security and the IRS worked together, traced Bitcoin transactions through the blockchain, followed digital breadcrumbs through supposedly anonymous systems. And in 2018, they found him, a South Korean resident named Sun Young-woo. They arrested him, arrested 337 others, saved children who were being actively exploited. It should have been a victory. Justice served, evil punished. But here's where the story becomes even more enraging. Sun Young-woo received 18 months in prison, less than 2 years. for running a website with 250,000 videos of child exploitation. The maximum sentence in South Korea was 5 to 7 years, already criminally low. But he got even less because, and I quote, he needed to support his family. The United States tried to extradite him. South Korea refused. He served his time, and today, Sun Young-woo is free, walking around, living his life. The man who facilitated the exploitation of countless children on an industrial scale got 18 months and went home. The injustice is staggering, the failure of the system complete, and Welcome to Video wasn't an isolated case. There are other websites, other predators, operating right now, hidden in encrypted corners of the internet. Law enforcement does what it can. Operations like Gray Skull that shut down multiple sites and arrest dozens of people. But for every site they close, others open. For every predator they catch, others remain free. This is the reality of the dark web. This is what thrives in the shadows. And this is why vigilance matters. Why protecting children matters. Why we can't look away just because something is uncomfortable to acknowledge. Before we continue, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button. These stories need to be told. These horrors need to be exposed. And the algorithm needs to know that people care about truth even when it's dark. Let's shift gears slightly. Talk about a different kind of violation. Revenge material, non-consensual intimate content. It became a massive problem in the early 2000s when technology made it easy to create and share private materials. Bad breakups suddenly carried the threat of public humiliation. Private moments could be exposed to thousands of strangers. Most mainstream websites eventually implemented safeguards, report buttons, verification systems, ways to remove non-consensual content. But the dark web has no such protections. And some people built entire businesses around violation and exploitation. A website we'll call Pink Crystal operated as an image board. Users posted intimate photos without consent. Some were revenge posts from bitter exes, but others were even worse. Hackers who broke into private accounts and stole materials that were never meant to be shared with anyone. A woman named Shelby discovered her private photos on Pink Crystal. Photos she'd never shared, never posted anywhere. Photos that existed only on her personal devices. And somehow Pink Crystal got them, posted them publicly, tagged her on social media, encouraged their followers to harass her. Shelby's dreams of joining law enforcement ended that day. The damage to her reputation was permanent and irreversible. She tried to sue, but Pink Crystal's operators were completely anonymous, untraceable. They'd used services specifically designed to hide domain registration. Even the hosting company couldn't identify them. The lawsuit failed. Pink Crystal continued operating, making money off of advertisements while destroying lives, monetizing violation, and calling it freedom of speech. Eventually, the FBI and Europol shut them down in 2014, but the damage was done. The lives ruined, the trust violated, and Pink Crystal's operators have tried multiple times to relaunch. They're still out there somewhere, still believing they have the right to profit from other people's trauma. The internet created incredible opportunities, but it also created new ways to hurt people, new methods of violation, new techniques for exploitation. And the worst part is how easy it is, how little technical knowledge is required, how anyone with basic computer skills and no conscience can become a predator. These stories aren't just cautionary tales, they're warnings. about the world we live in, about the threats that exist in spaces we can't see, about the predators who hide behind screens and encryption, and about the importance of protecting ourselves and each other in an increasingly connected world. Now let me tell you about something that might seem impossible, about tragedy unfolding in real time, while hundreds of people watched. On November 19, 2008, a young man named Abraham Biggs posted on an online forum. He was 19 years old, struggling with depression, contemplating suicide, and he wanted someone to talk to. The forum regulars knew Abraham. He'd made similar posts before. They were used to him expressing dark thoughts. So many treated this post like any other. Some offered support. Others told him to stop being dramatic. But Abraham was serious this time. He announced he was going to take his own life. And then he started a live stream. Abraham swallowed a handful of medications on camera, laid down, closed his eyes, and the chat exploded. Some people panicked, begged him to call for help, urged others to contact emergency services. But others encouraged him, told him to go through with it, mocked him, called him an attention seeker, dared him to prove he was serious. For hours, Abraham lay there, breathing slowing, body shutting down, and the chat kept scrolling. Some people left, others arrived. The mood shifted from concern to morbid curiosity, to active cruelty. People who should have been helping were instead treating a young man's death as entertainment. Finally, after 12 hours, a moderator managed to contact authorities. But when they arrived, Abraham was already gone, dead in his bedroom, while strangers watched and laughed. The live stream had been recorded automatically. The video existed, proof of what happened. Proof of how humanity failed a boy who needed help. The platform removed the video. The CEO expressed regret, encouraged users to be more vigilant in the future. But the damage was permanent. Abraham's family lost a son, lost a future, and somewhere in the logs of that chat, monsters walked away unpunished. People who encouraged a suicidal teenager to die and felt no remorse. That platform eventually became Twitch, the most popular live streaming site in the world. But Abraham Biggs's death haunts its history, a reminder of what happens when anonymity meets cruelty, when people forget that usernames represent real human beings, when entertainment becomes more important than empathy. Social media gives us connection, community, the ability to find people who understand us, but it also enables the worst aspects of human nature: the trolling, the bullying, the absolute dehumanization of treating someone's suffering as content, as something to laugh at, as something to encourage. We have to do better. All of us. We have to remember that words have power, that encouragement can be deadly, that what we say online has real consequences for real people. Abraham deserved better, deserved support, deserved to be taken seriously. Instead, he got cruelty, and it cost him everything. If you're struggling right now, please reach out. Talk to someone. Call a crisis hotline. You matter. Your life has value. And despite what internet strangers might say, the world is better with you in it. Take a moment, process that, and understand that these stories matter. They matter because they're true, because they happen to real people, because they could happen to anyone. Subscribe if you want more deep dives like this. Hit that like button if you appreciate the honesty, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. Let's build a community that actually supports each other. Now, let's talk about something that happened in real life but became lost media: about footage so disturbing it was deliberately destroyed, about events documented and then erased from history. August 1983, Manhattan Beach, California, a small preschool called McMartin, run by Virginia McMartin and her family for 28 years without incident, until a woman named Judy Johnson accused teacher Ray Buckey of harming her son. The accusation came during the Satanic Panic, a time when people believed Satanists were infiltrating communities, performing rituals, harming children. The paranoia was epidemic, and Judy's accusation ignited an inferno. Police investigated Ray Buckey, found no evidence, no medical proof, no history of misconduct. But instead of closing the case, they sent letters to over 200 parents, told them their children might have been harmed, asked them to bring their kids in for interviews. And that's when everything spiraled completely out of control. The interviews were conducted by an organization called Children's Institute International, run by social worker Key McFarland. And what they did was an absolute travesty. They didn't interview the children. They manipulated them, asked leading questions, rewarded answers that confirmed their bias, punished denials, and kept asking the same questions over and over in different ways until the children said what they wanted to hear. By the end, 360 children had supposedly witnessed crimes. Ray Buckey and 6 other staff members were charged, but the accusations were insane. Children claimed they'd seen witches flying, traveled in hot air balloons, been taken through underground tunnels, witnessed animal sacrifices. One child claimed to have been flushed down a toilet into a secret room. None of it was real. All of it was planted by incompetent, agenda-driven interviewers who created evidence through psychological manipulation. And every single interview was recorded on tape. Hours of footage showing children being led, coached, manipulated into lying about innocent people. The trial became the longest and most expensive in American history, lasted 7 years, cost $15 million, and at the end, everyone was acquitted. Every single charge dismissed, because there was no evidence, no tunnels under the school, no secret rooms, no proof that anything criminal had ever occurred. But the damage was done. Ray Buckey's reputation destroyed, his family torn apart, his life ruined by accusations based on nothing but hysteria and coached testimony. And those tapes, those recordings of children being manipulated, they were sealed, hidden, eventually destroyed. The evidence of one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in American history, deliberately erased. Today, you can't watch those interviews, can't see the manipulation firsthand. The tapes are lost media, gone forever. And while that might seem like a good thing, protecting the children's privacy, it also means we can't fully understand what happened, can't learn from those mistakes, can't hold accountable the people who destroyed innocent lives in pursuit of a fantasy. The McMartin trial taught us about moral panic, about the danger of leading questions, about how easy it is to create false memories, especially in children. But without the tapes, that lesson is incomplete, a warning we can't fully comprehend. Lost media exists for many reasons. Sometimes it's censorship, sometimes protection, sometimes just carelessness. But when that media documents important events, historical moments, or injustices, its loss becomes tragedy. We lose the ability to verify, to learn, to remember accurately, and history becomes vulnerable to revision. These Reddit threads that escalated too far teach us something crucial about trust, about verification, about the danger of assumptions. Whether it's a locked room in a girlfriend's house or a satanic panic destroying innocent lives, the pattern is the same. We believe what we want to believe. We see what we expect to see. And sometimes that blinds us to the truth. The man who worried about his girlfriend's locked room learned that secrets don't always mean betrayal. Sometimes they mean grief, pain, trauma that hasn't healed. Jumping to conclusions would have destroyed his relationship. Instead, communication saved it. The families who believed their children were being harmed at McMartin wanted to protect them, but their fear made them vulnerable to manipulation, made them believe impossible things, and ultimately caused far more harm than any actual crime ever could have. Michael, who found someone living in his walls, learned that safety is an illusion, that the spaces we trust can hide monsters, that verification isn't paranoia, it's survival. Sarah, who was stalked, learned that authority figures don't always help fast enough, that restraining orders are just paper, that protecting yourself requires constant vigilance, and that trauma doesn't end when the threat is removed. It lingers, reshapes your reality, changes you forever. Jennifer, who encountered a fake social worker, learned that trust is dangerous, that credentials can be faked, that predators often wear professional disguises, and that protecting your family means questioning everything, even when it feels awkward or rude. The archetype market story teaches us that good intentions don't justify harmful actions, that ideology doesn't change consequences, that freedom without responsibility becomes chaos, and that markets built on suffering will eventually fall, even if they run for 5 years first. Welcome to Video's story is almost too dark to process. The scale of evil, the number of victims, the light sentences for unforgivable crimes. It teaches us that justice systems around the world fail children, that international cooperation is complicated, and that even when predators are caught, punishment is often absurdly inadequate. Pink Crystal shows how easy it is to weaponize technology, to monetize violation, to profit from trauma while hiding behind anonymity. It teaches us that some people view others' suffering as entertainment, as business, as something that doesn't matter as long as they get paid. Abraham Biggs's death teaches us about the cruelty of online anonymity, about how distance and screens make it easy to forget someone's humanity, about how peer pressure works even when you never meet the peers, and about how desperately we need to rebuild empathy in digital spaces. These lessons matter because these patterns repeat. Different details, different platforms, different people, but the same core issues: trust exploited, systems failing, technology enabling harm, and ordinary people caught in the crossfire, trying to survive something that started as a simple Reddit post and escalated beyond anyone's control. If you've made it this far, you understand something important. These aren't just scary stories. They're warnings, maps of dangerous territory, evidence that the world is more complicated and more threatening than we like to admit. But they're also proof that people survive, that they fight back, that they share their stories so others can learn. Subscribe to this channel if you want more content like this. Real stories, deep dives, the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Hit that like button to help the algorithm understand that people care about substance over clickbait. And drop a comment sharing which story affected you most. Let's talk about it. Let's learn together. Because ultimately, that's what these Reddit threads teach us. we're not alone in facing these horrors. Others have walked this path before us, shared their experiences, left breadcrumbs so we can navigate more safely. And by listening, by learning, by taking these warnings seriously, we give their trauma meaning. We transform their suffering into protection for the next person. The locked room wasn't about secrets. It was about grief. The disappearing objects weren't about memory. They were about invasion. The stalker wasn't about romance. He was about control. The fake social worker wasn't about child services. She was about predation. The man in the walls wasn't about imagination. He was about survival in the worst possible way. The dark web markets aren't about freedom. They're about exploitation. And the lost media isn't about protection. It's about erasure. Every story, every thread, every escalation teaches us to question, to verify, to protect ourselves and each other, to trust our instincts, and to understand that sometimes the scariest monsters wear human faces, work normal jobs, have families, look exactly like the people we interact with every day. That's the real horror. Not supernatural entities, not paranormal phenomena, but human beings choosing to harm other human beings, and doing it so easily, so casually, with so little remorse. We can't stop all evil, can't prevent all harm, but we can be aware, can share information, can support victims, can hold predators accountable, can push for better laws, better enforcement, better protection for vulnerable people. And we can remember that every username represents a person. Every story represents trauma. Every warning represents someone who survived something terrible and chose to speak up. So let these stories stay with you. Let them make you more careful, more aware, more empathetic, more willing to verify before trusting, more ready to help when someone needs it, more determined to build a world where these escalations happen less frequently, where predators face consequences, where victims receive support, where Reddit threads about horror remain fiction instead of becoming reality. Thank you for watching until the very end, for taking these stories seriously, for engaging with difficult content. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video, comment your thoughts, and remember that awareness is the first step toward change. These horrors exist, but so does our ability to fight them. Together, we can make the internet and the world a little bit safer. One story at a time, one warning at a time, one act of solidarity at a time. Stay safe out there. Trust your instincts. Verify everything. And never forget that the scariest threads are the ones that refuse to stay online. The ones that bleed into real life. The ones that escalate too far. Until next time.